This episode of Sports Addict Live brought to you by none other than First Round Collectibles. With over 40 years experience, First Round Collectibles offers the widest variety of quality Beckett-graded sports cards anywhere. Representing 10 major sports, First Round has all your favorite players from all your favorite teams at great prices. We are proud of our knowledgeable staff and top-rated customer service, and our reviews vouch for our integrity. Visit us today at firstroundcollectibles.com and find your heroes. That's the number one, STRoundcollectibles.com. First Round Collectibles, sports cards for sports fans.
Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard. I go the hardest. I bring the pain. Not what you used to. It's all part of the game. Yeah, I just gotta go hard. I just gotta go hard. Go hard.
Hey, welcome. Sports Addict Live, Saturday afternoon edition, whenever you're listening or watching, wherever you're watching. Thank you so much for joining me, Sports Addict Live. Like I said, Saturday afternoon. Got some things I wanted to get off my chest. Might have some homies pop in later. Lots of things to get to before the weekend slate of sports. And best bets. Got some fun hockey bets for you tonight. Got some good bets for Sunday as well. Of course, week 14 in the NFL. To start off the show, though, I got to talk about this whole Shohei thing, this Ohtani thing. What a day yesterday. And if you don't know, I'm from Toronto. The Blue Jays are my team. I'm a baseball fan, a baseball observer. So as a Blue Jays fan, now yesterday I was home the whole day. I was on dad duty, me and the boy hanging out all day. And it basically consisted of him watching the Wiggles and me just like refreshing Twitter. This is pretty much all it was. Just me constantly refreshing Twitter, making sure the Wiggles or Miss Rachel, if you know, you know, just make sure that was on repeat. Just so if you don't know, John Paul Morosi posted in the morning that a decision by Ohtani was imminent. It was any moment. It was coming. Could be tonight, as in Friday night. And some guys started tracking private jets coming out of Anaheim, and Twitter just kind of took off. Now, in the afternoon, he tweeted again saying Shohei is on his way to Toronto. This is happening, blah, blah, blah. Once that happened, now you got to understand, as a Toronto sports fan, we have this like inferiority complex where we like no one wants to come here. No one wants to sign here. It's the taxes. It's the cold. It's the border. It's all these things. And nobody likes it here. We're this great city, this great country that nobody cares about. And that's kind of what we have in our minds. Now, Springer signed here for the Blue Jays. That was phenomenal. He's been hurt pretty much the whole time he's been here. So was there a reason why the Blue Jays kind of locked that down and other teams maybe backed off? Who knows? When Tavares signed here for the Maple Leafs, that's a Toronto kid coming home, right? Those pictures going viral of, you know, John Tavares and his Toronto Maple Leaf, you know, blankets. When Kawhi came here, that was a trade. He won a championship. He had the parade, and then he hopped on a bird and he went to California, right? So this idea that, you know, stars don't sign here. So the whole like week or two that people have been speculating that the Blue Jays are somehow the favorite in this whole thing for Shohei. Blue Jay fans, and I'll speak for myself, but I believe I can speak for Blue Jay fans Canada wide, were very apprehensive in actually buying this. Like, I don't know, like just not giving our hopes up, not buying in, not believing it until the ink dries and there is a press conference down on Front Street. Not believing it. On Blue Jay Way, I'm not buying it. And then yesterday comes around. And that tweet around 4 p.m., it was in the 4 o'clock hour when he confirmed that Shohei is on the way to Toronto. That's when all hell broke loose. And Blue Jays fans finally let their guard down and finally let themselves believe that not only are we getting a star player, but we're getting the most captivating athlete as far as on the playing surface in North American sports. Like, there's no doubt about it. When Shohei's pitching, when he's hitting, or doing one of each, like pick one, he is just an absolute super duper star. And the fact that he does both, if like you follow sports, you follow baseball, I don't have to tell you that this would be the biggest signing. Now, if he signed with the Dodgers, it would obviously be a huge signing. But the Dodgers always get stars, right? The Dodgers have Betts. They have Friedman. They have, Kershaw. They have Bauer before that all unfortunate nonsense, right? Like they've always had these stars and borderline superstars. If whatever team you want to pick on them. For the Blue Jays, this isn't just about the World Series. For us fans, it is. But from a Blue Jay perspective, this is a brand decision. And if the Blue Jays sign this guy, you got Canada's team that literally just took the sports world by storm, right? So this is a massive, massive deal, not just what it is, but for Toronto sports, for Canadian sports. And so if you were following that whole whirlwind on Twitter yesterday, that was just a crazy, crazy day. So much fun. Probably the most memorable sports day in Toronto sports history. There's moments when John Tavares scored the goal, game 6, first round last year. That was an amazing moment, but it wasn't a whole day. It was a specific moment at 11 o'clock at night or whatever it was on a Thursday evening or whatever, when the parade happened for the championship. Same thing with the championship. That was an amazing moment, but it wasn't a whole day thing. When the championship happened for the Raptors, the parade was a memorable day, of course. But we're talking like 9 a.m. straight through. And the emotional roller coaster of like, oh my goodness, like, because Morosi is a legitimate source. Like, it's not just some nobody, some hack, right? Like, this guy is the real deal. So when he says it, it's not strange to believe him, right? And, there's been guys who are saying, Judge is going to the Giants, and then within the day he goes to the Yankees, or, Bryce Harper, he's going to the Dodgers, and within an hour he signs with the Phillies. Like John Paul Morosi, you trust what this guy's saying, right? So when this happened, it's just the emotion. And then, Bob Nightingale and like all these guys in the evening saying, nah, he's at home. He's in Cali. The emotional decline, like it was a wild, wild, wild ride. Now, I'm seeing a bunch of stuff on Twitter and like Shai Davidi from Sportsnet. He's a good baseball reporter, like nothing against the guy, but a lot of people are, blaming Blue Jays fans or blaming Twitter for this, you know, um basically fake news, right? And the gossip and all this stuff. Now listen, if someone tweets out that Kikuchi has a 50 plus person, reservation for sushi, whether that's true or false, like I don't know who tweeted that out. It's fun, like to be like, oh, there's a sushi reservation, and then someone else is like, well, that's for his wife's birthday, and then someone else is like, no, her birthday's in June. It's definitely like that's just fun, right? But when John Paul Morosi says it, like that's not speculation by the fans. You have, and then MLB Network retweeted it, right? A bunch of other people retweeted it. Like this is legit, like notable people are tweeting and quoting John Paul Morosi. It's not the Blue Jays fans' fault. Trust me, I'm here. Okay. We waited out as long as possible before we bought into this. We tried our best to not believe this. But at 4 p.m., when JP is like, he's on his way, what do you expect us to do? Of course. And the Blue Jays, like we won back-to-back World Series in the early 90s. Okay. Since then, we've made it to back-to-back league championships in 15 and 16. Okay. We've made it to the playoffs in a couple years here, but if baseball didn't expand their playoffs, we wouldn't have made it into those, right? Like the amount of success that the Blue Jays haven't had since 93 is outrageous. And so when you're telling us that the best athlete in North American sports right now is coming to Toronto, that is a massive, massive deal. So it's not like gossip that it's not our fault when one of the most notorietable, if that's a word, baseball writers says he's on his way here. Trust me, we waited a long time to not buy into this. And so, yeah, don't be coming at Blue Jays fans for spreading this narrative because this, trust me, I'll say it one more time. We waited as long as possible to not buy into this. My good buddy John from the NHL show, if you've watched us, I see you. What's up, bro? How you doing?
I'm all right, man. Just kicking in on a nice Saturday here before the
Yes.
madness of football starts tomorrow, and my Devils play in a couple hours.
I see you got the game hat. I'm going to talk about them a little bit later for the best bets because I got a little daily ladder that I'm working on, and it all relies on your Devils winning. So don't let me down. So, John,
No pressure.
So you're from the South, as in America, not the South, but you're south of me. What do you make of this whole Shohei thing? Because this has just been a wild ride. I know you and I were talking a little bit last night. What do you make of all this?
Well, I told you this by text already, but for any viewers out there, I've had a lot of fun living vicariously through you for this because I feel like I'm getting a real Canadian perspective, which is something rare I get in baseball. Because I don't mean to put the Blue Jays down here, but they're like rarely the center of attention in baseball.
Right, nobody cares for sure.
I mean, they're getting more attention in recent years, but it's still, I think this would be the biggest thing that's ever happened to the Blue Jays if here, Ohtani were to end up in Toronto for sure. But I think Ohtani's just such a global icon at this point that he's just the biggest thing that's happened to baseball in maybe 20 years, something like that. So yeah. I think it's just a combination of things, and I think our buddy Andre touched on this last night too, that Ohtani's a rare breed that's bringing 3 different countries into the mix, all paying attention, watching his every move with the entire country of Canada invested in the Blue Jays. The entire United States just invested in the biggest baseball star, and the entire country of Japan wondering where they're gonna have to watch baseball next.
It's been crazy. And the funny thing that I forgot to mention, as I believe Pasternak just scored for Boston, and that helps my scoring parlay that I placed about 20 minutes ago. The one thing that I didn't mention was when they were tracking the plane and it landed, some reporter here had some friend who worked at the airport. And as far as I know, this is like for real. But with all of this, who knows what the heck's actually real or not. But apparently it was some guy from Shark Tank, from the show Shark Tank, who landed, like Robert something. So the idea that everybody was watching Robert whatever from Shark Tank's playing all day long, like it's hilarious. I just, it's just so funny how this whole thing went down, and it's like the Santa Claus tracker, bro. Like, you know, you can go on and you can track Santa Claus going around. That's legitimately what this is.
I won't lie, you made me laugh using that analogy with this the other day,
That's
because
exactly what this is.
Especially because Canada's so close to the North Pole as it is.
Right. Yeah, dude, it's outrageous. Yeah, and like I just like my main point in all of this is like I'm seeing people come at like Blue Jays fans, and there's even like Toronto Blue Jays reporters who are, you know, this is the art of gossip. And it's like, not like JP Morosi said this. Like, this isn't like just Blue Jays fans making up, you know, stuff out of like, you know, thin air. Like, people get it wrong. This is an awful thing to get wrong. Like, this is not something you want to get wrong, because literally the whole world's watching you. So it's not, you know, but like, I just don't appreciate people coming after Blue Jays fans when it's like, dude, like this is one of the most like reputable like guys in like baseball journalism. Like, it's not our fault. And like I said before, and I've said this already probably like, you know, 30 times in the last 17 and a half minutes, we waited as long as possible before we chose to believe this. Like, this has been rumored for over a week, and we have waited as long as we could before we actually bought this.
Yeah, you didn't really start talking to me about it until like yesterday, seriously, at least. I mean, you had mentioned it earlier this week when we were talking to each other, but like I think yesterday was the day you started getting pretty serious about it. And most of Twitter was kind of the same way. Like, there were rumors, but I think even betting odds changed yesterday for Toronto to win the
World
World
Series
Series.
odds.
That's how serious these rumors were getting taken by, well, everybody.
Yeah.
I think as a Yankees fan, this reminds me a lot of what happened last year with Aaron Judge, because
big time.
What you said about coming after Blue Jays fans, I do think is unfair. They're just reacting to the news. But I think as a reporter, it's worse, because that's a stain on the reputation if this doesn't get fixed. Like, Yankees fans, I can tell you from our side of things, we associate John Heyman with Arson Judge forever now. And he was a very reputable baseball insider, still is. But I think that took a hit on his reputation. I really believe that. Yankees fans do not let him forget it. And I think the Ohtani rumors are really reminding me of that.
And well, the big time. And the big difference here is Judge re-signed with you guys. If Ohtani signs with the Blue Jays, we're still going to be like, yo, JP, like that was crazy, but at least he signed here, right?
They could end up on the Giants side of this.
But if he doesn't sign here,
oh yeah, Toronto's going to riot.
It's going to be, and like I've already said, the inferiority complex that we have up here as Toronto sports fans is insane. And so, and like, it's been here for a long time, but like the whole Kawhi thing, like that hurt us. Like, if like Blue Jays fans, like we may never date again. If you use the analogy, like we may never even talk to another like baseball star. Like it's crazy, man. It's been unbelievable. I just, it was just such a wild day. And I tweeted out last night, my wife came home and she's like, hey, how's your day? Has anything new happened? And she doesn't care, but she's my wife and she pretends to be interested. And I was too tired to even start explaining. Like I was like, I can't even, no, nothing. I can't even, I just couldn't believe that day. It was unbelievable. And watching, so Overdrive is an afternoon drive time show here on TSN 1050, and they're also on TV. And so watching them from the 4 o'clock hour, and I'm sure it was the same whether you were listening to like whatever sports radio station across the country, from 4 o'clock to 5:30, that roller coaster of excitement. And then when the news started breaking that Shohei was not in Toronto and the come down of that, like it was just a wild ride.
Yeah, I'm very anxious to see how this Ohtani stuff plays out because this is going to define baseball for probably 5 or 10 years. Well,
Big time.
this is assuming he could still do both, like pitch and hit. I think there's
That's the big
speculation.
question.
I think there's speculation on the pitching side, at least if he's ever going to be the same pitcher again. I'm expecting him to get at least a couple of years out of it, maybe not the rest of his career. There'll probably come a point where he like becomes a DH or whatever. But I still think we're talking about one of the most notable players in baseball, and it's been a wild ride for sure to figure out like where he's going to end up. I mean, I think most of the baseball world thought he was going to end up with the Dodgers. I completely
For sure.
disagreed with that, but I've been very skeptical of that just because like he's been playing with the Angels, the other team in LA for quite a while, and it's like are you really going to go to the crosstown rival and get all the bad blood from the Angels in the same town for the next 10 years? I don't know if Ohtani wants to deal with that.
Yeah, the only argument that I would have with that is it's the Angels. Like, does anybody really care?
Not as
Yeah,
much as the Dodgers, admittedly.
right. There are Angels fans. I have family from California who are Angels fans and family who are Dodgers fans for that matter. But like there's it's just not even comparison the Dodgers fame to the Angels fame. The last thing
Yeah.
that I'll say about this, and this is a conversation that I'll have if he actually does sign here, is like this is a much like if he signs here, this is not a guaranteed World Series by any means. Like
No, it
Boba
never
had,
is.
no, like Boba Shed had a phenomenal year last year, but like Vladdy has got to step up. George Springer has to stay healthy. Kirk behind the plate, phenomenal year 2 years ago, disappeared for the entirety of last year. He's got to step up. So and if he is on this pitching staff, not next year, but the year after, like you're talking like Gosman, Bassett, like Kikuchi had a phenomenal year last year. Ohtani, like this could be a really, really like good team. But anyway, yeah, absolutely crazy. Moving on. That Eagles Niners game. Holy moly. What a wild thing. And I know that
Yeah.
you're literally just like jumping on to chit chat. I don't know how but like you write for football, you're ready to go. What did you take away from that Eagles Niners game on the weekend? And where do you see that? Like, what does that game mean to you for the future? Because I have some thoughts on that. And I don't know how much it actually means, but I'll kind of share my thoughts after. But what do you think of that game? And what do you think that game means for the future?
I didn't get to watch a lot of that game live, but I was keeping track of it. I thought it was a big statement win by the 49ers, but I thought the line all week was pointing towards a 49ers win because they were 2.5 point favorites in that game on the road. I thought it was a big indicator that the 49ers were going to win that game. They looked very impressive, man. Like
Oh, big time.
I think this said more about the 49ers than the Eagles, in my opinion. but I think it showed that when healthy, the 49ers are ready to play and they're legit. I think we have to remember during that losing streak, they were really hurting. Like McCaffrey wasn't 100%. I think Trent Williams was out for a while. Debo Samuel
People,
was an
yeah.
underrated piece missing. Um, I think the 49ers were missing a lot of key pieces during that losing streak. And now that they're healthy, they're kind of right back where they left off in the first 5 games of this season. I mean, they did this to the Cowboys too on Sunday Night Football way back in, I think, week 5. So I think, if anything, it shows the 49ers are legit and they're going to be around for a while. What I find fascinating is that the NFL in general just seems so top heavy this year. Like, I don't think there's a single strike that, the Cowboys, but outside of the Cowboys, I don't think there's a single wild card team I would take seriously in the playoffs right now, because the AFC has become a mess with the quarterback injuries that Pittsburgh and Cleveland are currently suffering from. They've fallen off a little bit. The NFC,
Jacksonville too now, right? Jacksonville too.
yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming Trevor Lawrence not going to play tomorrow, but there's been no confirmation yet. But I mean, he has a high ankle sprain, and Kenny Pickett missed his game with the same injury. So
Yeah.
I'll be a little surprised that Lawrence plays, though.
The one
I'm not.
thing I will say about that, sorry to cut you off, is that this afternoon they did sign Nathan Rourke, CFL legend Nathan Rourke, off of their practice squad. So that kind of tells me that they're expecting Lawrence not to play.
Yeah, I don't really know much about Rourke, but I did see that earlier today. I was going to be surprised if Lawrence played anyway.
Yeah.
Circling back to the Eagles, though, I wouldn't overly panic out this loss, but they do have a tough stretch coming up, and I don't know if you're going to get into the game tomorrow later on this, but
well, we can get into it now. It's all kind of the same topic.
yeah, I mean, clearly it's a big game against the Cowboys. Like, it's going to be for the NFC East lead, and I feel like the NFC, there's like 4 real teams competing for the Super Bowl. Like I said, it seems very top heavy this year, but no one clear standout. I think the first round, it's going to be a little bit like the NBA in past years, where like the first round is going to be chalk and predictable, but the divisional round looks like it's going to be where things get interesting. Tomorrow, I kind of like the Cowboys to win. I feel like they're so due to beat the Eagles, because the Eagles and the Niners have both had their number for a while. And I feel like Dallas is due to win a big game. This is at home. And I don't know if the line has changed, but I've seen it be around 3.5 on the Cowboys side. Personally, I thought that was a very strong Cowboys number. And the Cowboys do have the highest scoring offense in the league. Their defense is not far behind. Philadelphia, I still think they're a very solid team, but I think they've gotten away with winning a lot of close games this year.
Big time.
And I do think there's a couple of things that they need to address. They're definitely not a perfect team, but with all that said, I still like their chances of hanging on to the division. I still like their chances of being a legit Super Bowl contender. There's plenty of things the Eagles do right, but it's a tight race at the top right now. Honestly, I think between the Eagles, 49ers, and maybe Cowboys, depending on what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like, so for the Eagles, after this game tomorrow night, they play the Seahawks on Monday night, the week after, the next week. And then they play the Giants twice. No disrespect. And the Cardinals, right? So after the Seahawks, they play the Giants twice and they play the Cardinals. So I'm not overly concerned about the division. I think what was interesting about that game against the 49ers was this. If anyone's been watching this show since September when I've been going here, I've been saying this all along. The biggest weakness of the Eagles is the middle of the field at linebacker. That has always been the case. That's nothing new. I didn't learn anything new about the Eagles last week. And I mean, for like Howie Roseman's known to not really spend money at the linebacker position. So this is not some crazy, like, what happened to the Eagles linebacker? Like, nah, man, we knew this all along. You got Bradbury and Slay on the corners, and you got Blankenship, who is a fine player. But the linebacker position for the Eagles has been troubling all year long. Also, they played 3 games in 14 days against the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Niners.
Yeah, the
And
schedule did them no favors because the
no,
49ers were coming in well rested.
right from Thanksgiving. Now, that's not an excuse as much as it is just that's just kind of the way that it was. I've also said this the whole year that the only team that actually really scares me with regards to competition to get to the Super Bowl is the Niners.
Yeah, I would
Um,
agree. I still
I,
think this is between Philly and San Francisco. Even though I think Dallas is going to win tomorrow against the
yeah,
Eagles, I think this is just because they're due and they're at home. I'm still skeptical Dallas can win a big game in the playoffs when it really counts.
that's the big thing, right? And as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, I can speak to that. Like the Cowboys can look as good as they want to, and I have no problem talking about Dak to win the MVP. I think that conversation is an absolutely valid one. I have no problem talking about the Cowboys as maybe the best offense in the NFL. That conversation can be had, no problem. I just know in January they're gonna have a uh running back lineup as the only center and the only lineman, and they're gonna like do something silly to lose the playoff game. Like that's just kind of what happens with so going back to the Eagles, like I what's concerning to me isn't necessarily the Niners game. It's you've been playing with fire all year long, and you cannot play with fire when it comes to the Niners. You just can't. And last year with the Eagles, they would get out to these crazy hot starts, and then by the fourth quarter, they would sit all their starters and ho hum. And this year, they're like grinding out every single win. And that's just not sustainable long term. Clearly, Hurts has been having some issue for the like most of the season. I know like knee bruise and all this different stuff. He's not the same dynamic runner that he was. So this actual game against the Niners isn't what really made me concerned. What I've been concerned about all year was exposed against the Niners. So, and with regards to like tomorrow night's game against the Cowboys, listen, the Eagles split against the Cowboys every single year. So the Eagles won, I don't know, like a month ago. So it makes sense that they're going to lose tomorrow. It's just kind of like par for the course for this rivalry. I would love it if that didn't happen because the Eagles don't lose much. And I forgot what that felt like, and it wasn't nice. So if we could just like
You
win
guys
tomorrow,
have had it good
okay?
the last couple of years.
Dude. But that's the other thing, right? Is like Hurts has lost what 5 games, including the Super Bowl in the last like 2 seasons.
In the
Like
last two.
everyone, yeah, like everyone's talking about this like Eagles team as like they're frauds and all this stuff. It's like, hey man, the W at the end, like that's what like matters, right? And they haven't done a lot of losing over the last 2 seasons, so it's gonna be. But I do think that the Niners. It said to me way more about the Niners than the Eagles because what I saw with the Eagles is what's already been concerning me, and with the Niners, like what hole does that team have? Like you can run the ball on them, which the
49ers.
Eagles didn't do. Yeah, like you can run the ball on them kind of, but other than that, like their defense is probably weaker than their offense if you're looking at it, but that defense is top notch too. Like that's just a really good team in San Fran.
Yeah, I feel like the flaw with the 49ers is when Purdy gets pressure, he turns into a very average
Right.
quarterback, if
Yeah,
not
fair.
worse. But I think the scheme is so good when he has all his playmakers and he has so much around him that it's very rarely that exposed unless a couple of guys are hurt, like we saw in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
As far as the Eagles go, I think I've seen that fraudulent talk by some people. I think that's very harsh, and this is coming from a Giants fan that wants to believe it. Uh, the Eagles are not fraudulent. What they are is maybe have taking a minor step back from last year. But the thing is, they're still near the top of the league. They're still a top 5 team in the NFL. I mean, how many teams are we really putting in that tier with the Eagles? I would argue maybe the 3 best teams in the league are in the NFC this year.
I would agree with that.
It's
Yeah.
it's just ridiculously top heavy. Because
Maybe
I
the
don't.
Ravens you could throw in there too. But
Mm,
other than that, I don't know.
I need to see what they do without Mark Andrews. I think that's a huge
Oh, fair.
loss.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
I
Well,
still I think I'm with the Ravens. I'm like, I need to see them come out of the AFC for me to believe it. Like I've been very hesitant to crown them compared to
well,
most people.
that kind of segues into what I was going to talk about next. Oh, the one last thing is this whole Shaq Leonard thing. I Who knows what this guy's going to be. This past season, he's played 9 games, and on third down in a passing situation, he's more often than not uh, taken off the field. So that kind of shows you what the Colts have been seeing in him this year. This is a guy who, for his first 4 years in the league, was on like a Hall of Fame track, in my opinion. Just incredible. And now on third down, the Colts have been taking him off the field. So it's hard to see, but from a like Philly perspective, can't make trades, right? You can't make trades. You can't like what else are you gonna do? Sign Shaq Leonard and see what you got. Just roll the dice. That's all,
Eagles Eagles have been really good with those kind of signings the last couple of years. I feel
100%.
I feel like this is a taking a flyer type of situation, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of risk for the Eagles here. I mean, I don't know his exact
No,
contract situation, but it seems like
they
they
got a
got him
pretty
for next
cheap.
to
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Is like if you could have, packaged some picks together and made some like big trade, then that's a different conversation. But there's nothing else you can do. Like the only thing you can do is just take a flyer and see. There's rumors that like Sue might
Yeah,
be
I mean,
coming
the
back
Colts waived the guy, so the Eagles are really just taking a flyer.
100%. And he has a relationship with Sirianni from the Colts days too, right? So we'll see what happens. But the previous conversation talking about the AFC, this game tomorrow, Chiefs and Bills. And I was going to talk about this in my best bets segment, but I'll just talk about this now. I'm not betting this game.
I agree with
I
you. I would stay away
yeah,
from it.
I and there's a couple reasons on like both sides, but this has been really interesting to me where we're waiting for the Mahomes Reed offense to just show out. And is this who they are right now? Like, I don't know what to make of this team. I I don't want to bet against them. I believe they're at home, correct? I
Yeah,
don't want
they're
to
at
bet.
home.
Yeah, I don't want to bet against them because it's Mahomes, it's Reed, it's an Arrowhead, blah blah blah. But at the same time, man, I think their defense is phenomenal. But I think we're kind of treading that territory where the offense is what it is. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Very Travis Kelsey reliance.
Yes, which isn't good right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's face facts. I think everyone knows that they don't have a wide receiver to speak of right now.
Of course. Yeah.
And Pacheco's facing his own situations at the moment. I think he's made some headlines last couple days. I think this offense revolves around really 3 things. 2 of them are very well known with Mahomes and Kelsey.
Yep.
But the third thing, and I don't think this is talked about as much, they have a good offensive line. Like they do a good job with what they have. I think it reminds me a lot of the New England Patriots when they don't have their best teams, but still a very competitive team because
Right.
they have just enough to get away with things. A superstar quarterback, solid lines on both sides for that matter, and maybe one skill player that really shines. The rest kind of leaves something to be desired. I just think the Chiefs are not that flashy this year, and we expect them to be flashy because of Patrick Mahomes. But I think we need to get away from that. We need to think of this team as like the New England Patriots. What did they do every year with Brady and Belichick? They had one or two notable guys, but they did the little things correctly, and they weren't the most flashy teams, but they won. They won because they did the little things correct and things that go on behind the scenes. I just think people expect them to be like this flashy team because that's what the media hypes up Patrick Mahomes as, when I think in reality they're closer to a franchise that doesn't always win that way. They can win ugly, you know.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at it, like the game against the Birds, right? Like that crazy drop right basically in the end zone, they would have won that game. The first game against the year again, the first game of the year against the Lions, Tony drops that wide open pass. So there is a world where they have two less losses, right?
Yeah.
However, those drops is the story of the season. Like you know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, we
Yeah.
can look at it that way where
Against
these
your
two
Eagles too, and there
plays,
was a couple of big drops.
100%. Travis Kelsey dropped like there is a like thought process where it's like, okay, there is a world where if this happened, they would have won, but it's like that's not just some random drop. Like this is what these
No,
receivers have been doing all year. You know what I mean? And so it's going to be really curious to look or
I
to
think
watch.
this is my thing with the Chiefs though. Like if you take the Chiefs out, who are you taking them out for? I think this is my big question with the Chiefs and the AFC in general. The
Right.
Chiefs have been there and done that, and I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt. Where
Sure. Big time.
I don't think any other team in the AFC has, and I include the Buffalo Bills saying this. I think the Bills have been the most
Bills might
overinflated.
not make it to the playoffs, dude. Like
I don't
that's
think they're gonna. I don't
that's
think they're making the playoffs. I really don't. And
yeah.
this is a bad AFC this year. Well, at least with the recent injuries, have made it a bad AFC. Like
Yeah.
I think the Bills are overinflated. Like we give them the benefit of the doubt they truthfully haven't earned.
Well, so and that kind of segues again. It's like you're reading my notes, John. You're segueing perfectly. I've been saying this all along before this show. People who are friends of mine, they know this. And if you've been watching this show over the last few months, before last season, everyone basically gave the Super Bowl to the Bills before the season even started, except for me. I just didn't understand like that game against the Chiefs, the whole 13 seconds, like that was incredible. But Josh Allen, he plays every single snap like it's the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, fourth and long. Like you can only live so long playing like that. The defense is basically so anyway, before this year, my bold prediction was that they weren't making the playoffs. I already didn't believe in this team. I just thought, like you said, overhyped. Now, that entire defense is in the hospital right now. Von Miller has already been a non-factor. I know he's playing this week, which I won't get into that whole thing. I think it's ridiculous he's playing this week. That's just my opinion. Other people can think whatever they want. I don't like that he's playing, but he will be. But he has been a non-factor pretty much this whole year. And then this whole like drama with the Sean McDermott thing, like I don't think that's nothing, man. Like that locker room,
No, it's not.
that's a big deal. So I I do think that Josh Allen played his best game. I know it's not statistically and all the like deep nerd stats like DVOA and EPA and all these. It wasn't technically his best game of the year, but that game against the Eagles, watching it was for me the best I've seen him look this whole season. But I don't know. The only thing that makes me think the Bills can win this game is even with their defense not being what it was because of the injuries, can the Chiefs find a way to move this ball? I don't know. But I don't know. I just think the Bills, it the time has kind of passed. If Josh Allen balls out and Patrick Mahomes can't move the ball, it wouldn't shock me. But I think
We should
and
remember the
even
Chiefs have a good defense, though. I mean, they
right,
held the Dolphins to
right.
14 points, and even your Eagles didn't put up a ton on them.
No,
They
no,
held the Lions too in back way back in week 1. I
yeah,
don't think the Lions scored more than like 14 points offensively on the Chiefs at least, because one of their touchdowns was like a pick six. I'm pretty sure.
yeah.
Jaguars got held to like 9 points playing the Chiefs with when Trevor Lawrence is healthy.
That's
I
right.
mean,
Yeah. No, that defense has balled out all year. There's no doubt.
yeah, this is what I mean about the Chiefs. Like they're not winning flashy, but they do have pieces, which is why I think I just trust them more as a team right now. And I think they've earned that trust. I mean, even
100%.
last year, I thought they would take a step back once Tyreek Hill went to the Dolphins. I thought they needed him. But I think the Chiefs have proven they can win without a star wide receiver. And quite frankly, this is like a classic Patriots year where like they can win just because nobody else is that good.
Do you think that the reason why their offense is a not a bit more stagnant, much more stagnant this year than last year is because last year they didn't have Tyreek, but they had like all these things like going for them. And this year, the whole league had last year to watch. Okay, this is how they play without Tyreek, and now like the book is just kind of out on them.
Yeah, it's very possible. I also think the wide receivers got even worse.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
combination of both, but
yeah.
I don't think your point is wrong. They could definitely be playing a part in it this year.
Before we move on to my to our since you're with me, our favorite bets for tonight and tomorrow. Is there anything else in tomorrow's football world that kind of sticks out to you?
Ah, I noticed the 4 o'clock slate's pretty good just in general. Like
Very, yeah,
we're getting a very good 4 o'clock. I mean, Seattle and San Francisco is a 4:05 game, which I think is not getting enough attention just because I think most people expect the 49ers to like blow them out. And I get it. I think I'd pick the
and the
49ers.
Chiefs Bills is at 4:30, right? So there's
Yeah.
that too.
There's definitely a couple of low key big games that are going to fly under the radar. Colts Bengals, I think, is a huge game for playoff implications. I think the Colts have an opportunity to strike, and this is like the Bengals' last stand. They've kept their season alive longer than I thought they would at this point.
Yeah.
Uh, there's another game like that too. Browns Jaguars, I think will be a very telling game tomorrow.
Ooh, yeah.
Likely, this is not official, but likely Beathard and Flacco. Browns still haven't announced the starting quarterback either, so I'm very intrigued to see who both sides put out there
It
tomorrow.
it it seems like Flacco's going to start
Yeah,
tomorrow, and
he
why
just
wouldn't you, man? Like
actually just
Flacco,
I wrote this on
he's
Gridiron Heroics. He just got activated from the practice squad, and they waived PJ Walker.
dude. He may have been the best looking quarterback that the Browns have had all year.
It's kind of crazy to think
I know.
everyone thought he was washed up.
Well, his arm is still a cannon, dude. Like he's still
He was
like
always
slinging the
known for
ball.
his arm.
And
Yeah.
like, yeah, and like I know that they lost, but it's like, dude, the guy can still like do the job. You know what I mean? And the Jets must just be killing themselves. Although I can't, don't even. I'm not gonna put myself
Oh
down a
God,
Jets
yeah.
wormhole because that was a disaster. But all right, let's take a quick 30-second break, and we'll get into our best bets for the weekend.
All I hear, go get the money. So I go get it. Hate means I do something right. So I'ma let him. Yeah, I'ma let him. Yeah, I'ma let him. I hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I'ma let him. All I hear, go get the money. So I go get it. Hate means I do something right. So I'ma let him.
All right, best bets brought to you by First Round Collectibles, sports cards for sports fans, firstroundcollectibles.com. Number one, STRoundcollectibles.com. Also, before I go on, before I forget, big shout out, all music you hear on this podcast by Wes Harris. Wes Harris, the intro, the outro, the best bets theme, all of it by Wes Harris. All right. So considering it is 2:12 on the East Coast, we'll start with some hockey picks. I'm just going to do straight up picks, like result picks. I don't have any crazy props as of right now, but follow me at Sport Addict Mark and I will update my prop bets. Been a big shots on goal guy lately, and I'm sure I'll find something for the night. If you followed Eric's Ericson Eck. I'm butchering that terribly, but if you followed my pick on that, then you won some money last night. First one, your Devils in Calgary, minus 120 favorites, which I assume is that low just because it's in Calgary. I assume if it was in New Jersey, they'd probably be closer to 150. I am picking the New Jersey Devils on the money line, minus 120. What do you think about that, Mr. Devil Man?
It's my favorite bet of the night, actually.
Let's go.
Yeah, I think the Devils are starting to get it together. They've done a good job on this West Coast trip. I think they've had two encouraging games. For those that don't know, they've played in Vancouver and Seattle, so they've been on the West Coast for a while now. What I like about it is that the Devils have finding different ways to win. Like they got quite a scare in Vancouver. I think Devils fans have been complaining that they haven't had a complete game all year, and they almost looked like they were gonna have a complete game in Vancouver, but they gave up a 5-2 lead, and that was
nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and I swear I went to bed at the end of the second period thinking they had it wrapped up. And I'm almost glad I did, because that would have stressed me out big time, like watching that game. Devils had to score with 30 seconds or so to go in that game.
I watched every minute of it, man. That was a phenomenal finish.
And they're coming off a win in Seattle too, where, believe it or not, that was the first time all year they won a game scoring less than 3 goals. They usually rely on outscoring their opponents. They're quite an offensive juggernaut when they're healthy, at least. I don't think Calgary is a consistent enough team for me to trust them in this spot against the Devils. I feel like 120 is reasonable to put up, and I do think you're right that I'm going to assume it's just because they're on the road and the fact that they've played a couple of games of late where Calgary might be more rested. I don't think they played last night, right?
No, there was only 3 games last night. No,
last night was a short slate.
Yeah, and I'm 100% with you. What was really encouraging for me, like you and I have had this conversation, and with our boy on our hockey show, which will be coming back next week in some fashion. Stay tuned for details. We've talked about this, like the Devils and the Oilers both have had a really hard time like regaining trust. What I do like about the Devils is that win against Seattle, man, that was not a like shootout. That wasn't a super fast game. It wasn't a barn burner. That's a 2-1 holding on for dear life with about a minute left. Like I think it was Schmidt was in net, I believe. I could have that wrong. But either way, the goaltender for the Devils, man, he like made some big saves at the end of that game. That win, I would think, is super encouraging from a Devils standpoint. Like
100%. It's
to win a 2-1 game.
It's a rare fashion that we win. We don't win many games with low goals scored.
No, that was huge. So I'm 100% with you. Devils on the money line, minus 120. The next bet that I really like tonight, Rangers in Washington, minus 1.5. I like them on the puck line. You're getting it at plus 146. I just think the Rangers have more firepower. It's like that simple. There are the odd game with the Capitals where they score 4 or 5 goals out of nowhere, But for the
Yeah.
most part, I just don't think the Capitals can keep up. I think the goaltending now, Lindgren is in net for the Capitals, and he's been a really fun story this year. But even if it's a low scoring game, 2-0, 3-1, I think the Rangers can pull this out -1.5. And like I said, you're getting that at +146. And -170 if you want to go just with the money line. But I think there's enough trust in the offense for the Rangers, and the defense for that matter, to take on the puck line +146. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I mean, I think we all know the Capitals are not a team that scores a lot of goals this year. Somehow they're playing well though. Like they're like right in
Oh
the
yeah,
they're like
yeah.
right in the playoff mix. I think they're just one of those weird teams I can't put my finger on just yet. They've despite being kind of an older team in my opinion, one that really relies on grinding games out, they found ways to win. I do think the Rangers are kind of at the top of the mountain right now, looking down on everybody else in their division, at least. Because
Mhm.
the Metropolitan division is really tight outside the Rangers, who are up by like 8 points, I think, or seven against the next best team right now, where everybody else kind of fighting for those spots at the moment. I like this matchup for the Rangers. I think they played the Capitals game a little better. They're a great defensive team and goaltending team, so I would back a puck line play for them too.
100%. Just to update, uh, Boston was up 3-0, and then I've been talking to you about these bets for the last 5 minutes, and now it's 3-2. This Arizona team, man, they're a lot of fun to watch, and I'm so glad they brought these old jerseys back, man. We've talked a lot about jerseys. These old Jeremy Roenick, Shane Doan jerseys, man, they're classic.
I got an old Arizona hat somewhere in my house.
Oh, I
Like
love it. It's
I used to buy a couple of the old retro hats into hockey.
Sure.
Like the Arizona one I have somewhere. I really like that one.
It's phenomenal. I love it. Okay, last bet. Now listen, this bet's been fluctuating like since last night to today. I wrote this down about an hour ago and it may have changed. The Canucks are home against the Hurricanes, and the Canucks are +105 dogs. Now, last night they were +102. And then this morning I checked and I put money on it last night. As soon as I saw that, I was like, yes,
Yeah.
please. This morning it was -104, still dogs, but -104. And then about an hour ago, it was back to +105. Either way, if you can get this number at plus money, get it. This
Yeah.
Canucks team is they are a very good team. And
Canucks are
I
like
watched,
plus 110 in some sports books right now.
dude, take it. I've watched, I know that there's some injuries on the defensive end and whatnot, but listen, I've watched the Canes a lot this week. They were up 2-0 against Calgary, who we just talked about. And Calgary didn't just come back and win, but they won by at least 2 goals. I can't remember the exact score, but they came back and they won handily. I watched the game against, oh man, who was it? Carolina against Edmonton, where Edmonton won 6-1. And I watched that whole game. The Oilers did not look very good. They looked fine, but the Oilers didn't look like you see 6-1 and you think, oh, the Oilers dominated. Nah. The Oilers, everything they shot went in the net. And the Canes just looked lost. And the pucks were coming off their sticks super slow. And it just like this Canes team does not look good right now. They just don't. I watched them twice this week, both on this Western road trip, and both games were very uninspiring. So if you're getting the Canucks plus money, even if this bet like loses, it's still the right bet. Like I think taking the Canes here is lunacy, and I'm taking the Canucks all day long. What say you?
I just have to question why Carolina is a favorite on the road in this
I it,
situation.
for sure.
It's
It's for
scaring
sure.
me a little bit.
Yeah.
I do agree with the sentiment about Carolina that I've been disappointed in them so far this year. And like let's just face it, they got smoked by Edmonton the other night. And that
Oh
was
yeah.
in America, that was on national television too. So
Oh right, TNT, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So that did not do them any favors, at least for exposure. Edmonton, I feel like, is starting to get it together a little bit. I've been impressed with the way they're playing of late after their god awful start in the first 10 or 15 games of this season. It feels like Edmonton's starting to play a little better. I'm not holding my breath with them, but they're definitely better than they were in the first 10 games since
Well, they're
that
getting
coaching change a while back.
100%. And the thing about the Oilers is they're getting like the right bounces now too, where at the
Yes.
beginning of the year, even when they played well, they weren't like those bounces weren't going their way, right? But yeah, dude, but I'm telling you, man, even like 6-1, like the Oilers spanked them, but like it, if the Canes just played average, that game would have been much closer than it was. Like the Canes didn't even show up to the rink. It was so yeah, I just like I'm with you that this line is concerning. But I'm taking it. Like you're giving me, you know what I mean? So I'm
It's tough for
taking
me
it
to say because, like, Vancouver, I think, is one of the best teams in the league.
for sure. And I think that like I do think that regression is probably like probable. Like I do think they are going to take some sort of step back, but even when they lose, like this team works really hard and they play
Yeah.
really well. And so before I move on to the NFL, is there anything else in hockey world that you see tonight on the board that you would take?
I wanted to ask you about one particular line I saw, kinda get your thoughts on this being
Sure.
closer to this team. I noticed Montreal's a big underdog tonight against Buffalo,
Yeah.
which I find very questionable. Like, why are they plus 150 against a mediocre Buffalo team?
Mhm.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that one.
Yeah, they do have some injuries. Their backup goaltender is playing tonight, Primo. Um, so that's kind of what I see in that. I already tweeted this out. I like Montreal tonight. I
I'd be very tempted to take plus money on them just because I don't
yeah,
trust Buffalo.
no man, Buffalo. So Buffalo beat Boston 3-1 the other night. And as awesome of a start that Boston's had, and I still think Boston, if like you told me today you think Boston's the best team in the league, I wouldn't argue you. I don't necessarily believe it, but I can't argue against it.
Right.
But like Boston's been having some of these nights lately where they're just not super sharp. The pucks aren't going in. I mean, right now they were up like 3-0 against the Coyotes. And within 5 minutes, it was 3-2. Like Boston's been having some of these. So I don't trust Buffalo either. I did pick up Power up on the waiver wire in fantasy. So if he could have a couple helpers tonight, that'd be great. But I'm with you. I think the Canadians plus 154, I believe, or I can't remember.
It's somewhere in the 150 range.
Yeah. So
Last I looked.
yeah, so I like that as well. I really do. And yeah, I like you said, man, I just think Buffalo's coming off that win. And I think you pointed this out to me. Buffalo, they're not winning back-to-back games very often. So
Andre and I have liked to joke about that a lot.
yeah, so yeah. All right, on to the NFL. I got a couple quick picks here, and then we'll close out the show. I so the Lions and the Bears. Lions -3 against the Bears. I am not picking anybody on this as far as a side goes. I like the Lions -3. I trust the offense of the Lions much more than I trust the offense of the Bears. However, this Lions defense is ultra concerning. I think this defense for Detroit is what separates them as a contender from the rest of the top like teams that we talked about before. The Lions defense have allowed 20 points or more 9 times this season. 7 of those 9 was over 24 points. 5 of those 7 was over 28 points, and 3 of those 5 was over 37 points. So if you follow me here, the defense of the Lions really concerns me. The last game they beat the Bears 31-26.
They were lucky to win that one.
Yeah, man, the Bears led that game by 2 touchdowns the whole way through it. Now the offense has scored 20 points or more in all but one of their games, and that was the beatdown against the Ravens. So I think that they're going to score points against this Bears defense, but I also think the Bears are going to be able to put up points. The over is 42.5 at -115. Again, this was an hour ago on FanDuel. And I would hammer that over 42.5 to me. I think this is probably going to be around the same score, 31-26 in that the kind of neighborhood. So I really like that that play in this game. What say you?
If I had to pick one bet on the board, this is something I've been really noticing all week. It has to do with the spread. Looking at that Colts Bengals game, when it first came out, I noticed the Colts were a small favorite. And I had this discussion with my dad on Monday or Tuesday, and we both looked at each other like, why are the Colts after the Monday night game, I should say, we looked at each other, we're like, why are the Colts favored in that game after what the Bengals just did? The Bengals to me against the Jaguars with Browning showed that they're still around and that they can play. And
he looked great.
Exactly. And I think the Monday night game really reflected that in the spread. I mean, because the spread has changed significantly. The Colts went from like 2-point favorites to 2-point underdogs, which is one of the biggest line shifts I've seen in quite a while.
Yeah.
And I told my dad on Tuesday, watch that line the rest of the week. I think the Bengals should be favorites in that game, and I feel like it's finally corrected itself. And the public seems to agree because I think 80% of the handles on the Bengals in that game. I don't normally like to bet with the public here, but I think that the line has moved so significantly has shown that the sports books, at least BetMGM from what I've looked at, is trying to like get some money back on the Colts here. And I don't think anybody's buying it, but I think for good reason. Like the Colts are on a winning streak, so this is my one concern with them. But I think Browning has shown that he can play and that he's good. The Colts defense is not one of the better defenses in the NFL. Bengals still have some pieces that they can work with if Browning can get it together. I'd be looking at the Bengals here. I know it's very late to get that line. I wish I would have jumped on it earlier in the week, but I think it's just a general prediction. I like the Bengals to win that game.
So once again, you're reading my notes. I don't have the Bengals as a result. I agree with you. The only concern for me is the recency bias aspect of it, right? Is that like we just saw this game Monday night. He looked phenomenal. To me,
Jonathan Taylor's out too again, so I think that's a big deal for the Colts.
To me, on the Bengals win Monday, this Jags defense has been borderline fraudulent to me all year.
The passing defense has been horrible.
Right. And when it has been really good and I believe in them, and then they suck. And then they're good and I believe, and then they suck. And so like for me, the Jags defense is somewhat fraudulent. And so that concerns me a little bit with the Bengals. However, I love the over. The over is 43.5. The Colts, Minshew mania, baby. I love it. I think they've been scoring. So the Colts have scored the same metrics that I was using on the Lions game. The Colts have scored over 20 points in all but one game. Over 25 points 6 times, and their defense has allowed over 19 points 9 times. So to me, I feel like every week I check these Colts scores or I watch the game and it's like, 39-38, 31-28. Like I think this is going to be a super high scoring game. And I think 43.5 is pretty low. I don't quite know why it's that low. A little bit concerning, but I love the over in that game. Can I tempt you with the over or what?
In Colts Bengals, yeah, I'd be willing to go over in that one.
Yeah,
I think the
43
Colts
and
are
a
just
half,
a team I
right?
like to back the over in general.
For sure. 100%. And the other thing too with the Bengals defense over 30 points in 3 of the last 4 games. And the one of that 4 where they did not score over or did not allow over 30 was against Pittsburgh. So you can kind of do the math there. Pittsburgh can't get out of their own way offensively.
Yeah.
If you want to be the other play I really like as well, before I move on, is I know you're paying a lot of juice at minus 174. I think the Houston money line against the Jets is like they're minus 3.5 point favorites at minus 108. I something scares me about that line. I think that they should be able to cover that line pretty handily. Zach Wilson's back in at quarterback. I know Tank Dell is not their only playmaker on offense, but his absence does make it a bit more one-dimensional than it has been. So I would rather take that money line and parlay it with something that you like, or just like take the low payout and bet the money line minus 174. To me, that is almost irresistible. I don't know. What about you?
I think I just stay away from that game in general.
Really?
Because the main reason is the way the line is moved this week is really concerning to me.
Right.
Because early this week, the Texans were 6.5 point favorites, and that's gone down to 3.5. I don't think that's just because of the Tank Dell injury. I don't think he's significant enough to move it 3 points. But I think just the way that line has shifted is really drawing up a red flag to me. And this feels like a game the Texans would lose. They were in a very similar spot earlier this year against Carolina, going on the road as small favorites. They lost that game outright.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to trust the Jets right now. I think I would just stay away from that game in general. Maybe take the under. I think I'd like the under in that game better with the way the Jets offense has looked of late. And I think their defense can slow down Houston too.
Did this change from this morning? This under is 32.5.
Which is basically
which is basically saying they don't think the Jets will score 32.5.
I still kind of like the under in that game. I think I'd like it better than the spread or money line.
I'll say this. I was a huge proponent of the under in the Steelers-Pats game, like everybody was. And
Vegas killed everybody in that one.
I don't want to even talk about under anything.
That cashed in the first half, the over.
If you want to get super frisky with a Houston money line, Colts, Bengals over, Lions, Bears over, you're getting that at plus 444. That's a little fun. And I believe those are all 1:00 games. So you win some money, put it on the afternoon and the evening game, and you're golden. As far as underdog picks, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but Bucks against the Falcons plus 110. This is more of a fade of the Falcons than it is a pro bet on Tampa Bay. I know Tampa Bay's record is but like I don't hate how this team moves the ball. Not super trustworthy, 100% granted, but if you're giving me plus money against the Falcons, I just this is more of a fade on the Falcons than the Bucks. And the other um underdog bet is basically the same thing. Broncos plus 128 against the Chargers. The Chargers suck. We're just there now. The Chargers suck. They got 6 points against the Pats.
You have the
Understood the
wrong
Pats
coach.
defense. I get the Pats defense. I get it. This is a conversation that I don't want to have right now. You can come on. We can talk about it later. Everybody is defending Justin Herbert. All these nerds are defending Justin Herbert. I understand the coaching. I understand he's had injuries. I understand. But he's got to start taking some of this blame at some point. This can't all be coaching. It can't all be, Brandon Stalin and Kellen Moore and blah, 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 blah. At some point, he's got to take ownership for some of this as well. So I like fading the Falcons by picking the Buccaneers plus 110, and I like fading the Chargers by picking the Broncos plus 128. What say you?
With the Bucks pick, I'm right in stride with you. I do think the Bucks are going to win that game outright. I trust their defense more than Atlanta, and Baker's not played bad. I actually think he's played better than Ritter this year. I'll say it.
Yeah,
And
100, of course.
yeah, Tampa's got a better defense than Atlanta, just straight up. Like I think the line is even suggesting that Tampa's going to win outright because I think they're only 1.5 dogs in that game, and it's in Atlanta. I get it. Atlanta's not a bad home team this year, but I get this feeling that the NFC South winner is not finishing 500 or above 500.
Oh, yeah, that's a
and
fun
like Atlanta's the only 500 team in that division right now. I think I'm with you on the. I think I'm with you on the Tampa pick. I would really like that money line play. I'm just looking at underdog picks in general, and in this week coming up, the Broncos are tempting too. I think a lot of the public is on the Broncos too. I think like 80% of the bets are on them.
Yeah,
Like
I said, man, it's just fading the Chargers.
yeah, I definitely get the sentiment. I might be more tempted to back the Bears. You talked me into that one.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, I don't like. If I had to choose, I'd pick the Lions just because of the consistency of the offense. Even against like the Packers on Thanksgiving, they still scored 22 points. It's not like, however, I would just both, I don't know. I'm scared of picking a side. And back to the Broncos pick against the Chargers. So every gambler needs to have rules. Every gambler has to have boundaries. It could be, like a spending limit, for the week, or a time limit. These apps now you can time out, so you only spend an hour a week on these apps. Whatever your like rules are, I respect it, adhere to it, pay your rent, and pay for food.
Right.
One of my number one betting rules is I just don't bet on the Chargers. I just don't. I will never. I'm not even joking.
I would not be betting on the Chargers in this game too. I agree. It's a Broncos or pass.
I have a notebook that has my gambling rules written down, and do not bet the Chargers is there. And so, but then again, even betting against the Chargers is a little bit nerve-wracking. All right. I'll wrap it up. The Sunday nighter. I'm an Eagles fan. I said this from September that the Eagles and the Cowboys always split. I think the Cowboys will win this game. However, I will not be spending my money on that because I'm cheering for the Eagles, and I'm just gonna whatever, man. There's lots of money to make throughout the day. I'm not gonna be mad that my Eagles won. I'm just not doing it. What I will say on the Cowboys side, CeeDee Lamb over 7.5 receptions is shoot, I just have it here. Over 7.5 receptions, minus 106. He catches like 11 passes every game. Like, I think over 7.5 is awesome. If you can get a lower number than that, then jump on it. But I really like that. Also, Ferguson, over 45.5 yards is minus 114. I would also be tempted. Ferguson over 60 yards plus 162. And what have we talked about with this Eagles team? It's the middle of the field with those linebackers. I think Ferguson is due to have a big day. I can't remember the stats exactly, but he had a big day against the Eagles a month ago. So those are my favorite bets for the Sunday nighter. And I'll throw some more out on Twitter at Sport Addict Mark throughout the day tomorrow. John, thanks for joining me last minute, man. This has been fun. I've missed you, man. Was talking to you every day for a few weeks, and we took a break last week, so it's good to see you. What do you have to plug? You got any new articles coming out? Where can the people find you? What do you got cooking these days?
Mainly my Twitter handle, which I got written down on here under my face here. I mainly write football content, but I come on with Mark to talk hockey. We should be starting up the hockey podcast on Monday, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get back to talking there. Hopefully Andre will be around then too.
100%.
And mainly I put all my football articles on Twitter. You can follow me there at John Galletley. And I write on Gridiron Heroics, and I got an author page on there too. I should link that on Twitter as well. I got to get around to updating that. Yeah, so I mainly am writing football content these days, but I'm looking forward to talk some hockey too with Mark on Monday.
Absolutely. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me, man. Thank you to First Round Collectibles, firstroundcollectibles.com. Thanks to Wes Harris for all the great tunes. Follow us both on Twitter. Stay tuned for the NHL show. And all my picks there tonight. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.